Good morning and happy Labor Day. So Nicolette and I are jumping on a little bit more leisurely today with it being a public holiday here in Queensland. So if you're here in Queensland enjoying the public holiday, say hi, let us know what you're up to and where you're joining us from. And if you're in one of our other states or even international, we'd love to hear from you too and to say where you're connecting in from. So today we're keeping things fairly free and flowy, and we've just decided to jump on and offer a few gems that we've picked up along the way in terms of our learnings and some of the things that have made a difference for us. So we're both going to share 3 gems today. Well, that's the overarching idea.
That's the intention.
Yeah, that's the intention, but we'll see how we go. We'll see where the river takes us. So I am going to kick things off today with probably a little bit of a story or an insight that I got a number of years ago along my travels, which was I was in a work environment that there was quite a lot of politics going on, and I was reasonably young in my career, and with the political environment, it had made me mad, and there were certain things that were triggering, and that was causing to knock me off center. And at that time, what I reflected on and what I realized was actually knocking me off center wasn't necessarily the circumstance. It was the fact that as we grow up, we've actually got something called the just world schema. And that's this idea that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. You think about any Disney film, and that's the overarching theme, that the good person expects something good to happen, then something not good happens by the villain, by the bad person. Ultimately, the villain gets their due ends, and the good person runs along to have a good, happy rest of the life. And that's really prevalent in our culture, this idea that good things happen to good people, and if that's the case, then I'm okay, and bad things happen to bad people, and that's justice, and so if that happens, that's okay. And at a conscious level, we know that that's nonsense. And we go, well, of course, good things don't always happen to good people. And of course, bad things don't always happen to bad people. And it's our response to this justice schema that plays out that actually causes us suffering. So the truth is good things happen to good people. Good things happen to people that are doing the best that they can with what they have. And bad things happen or life happens, tragic things happen, life experience happens to good people, and life experience happens to people who are doing the best that they can. And it's really our labels of good and bad and what we're making that mean that determine how we feel inside. So to make that really simple, it's about catching ourselves. When have I expected something to be other based on this idea of what's fair or what's just, and how is that knocking me off center? How am I expecting things other to be other than what they are? And if that's the case, that is the justice schema or the just world serving to trip you up, because ultimately the world plays out as it does, not as humans have put in place concepts to try and give us a sense of safety within the world. So we always want to take ownership of our own inner world by expanding enough and accepting that, okay, people are all engaging with the world in the way that they have most effectively learned to get their needs met to date. Now, that doesn't mean that the outcome is effective. It means that the the way that they personally get their needs met, i.e. a sense of safety or significance or elevation or whatever it is, that's the quickest and most effective way that they have learned to date to get that need met. And once we realize that everyone is operating to that effect, what's the simplest, easiest way to get my needs met, whether that's hard work, whether that's contributing to others, whether that is being very eager to absorb what I can, whatever it is, that is people's most effective way that they have learned to date. And it's our justice schema that's tripping us up, versus if we can just have an acceptance that, yep, that's what people do and that's how people behave with what they have, and open up around that and go, okay, well, what's my outcome? Now, in looking at my outcome and what's under my belt, to go, what's most important to me, which will indicate the direction I want to head. And then 2, how do I work with rather than against? Because resistance creates resistance. And so if I ask myself, how can I work with to achieve the outcome that I deem to be the most important or meaningful to me, then we're living a life of purpose. So that's the first one that kind of came through. So I'm hoping that all made sense.
Yeah, it does. It definitely makes sense. And what came through for me when you were talking about that is when we come up against times of challenge, if we keep coming back to the knowledge and the belief that I don't want to say I was going to say everything happens for a reason, but I feel like those words have a bit of like people don't necessarily like those words. Rather that everything has a silver lining. So there will always be something positive come out of a negative experience. And so if we're in a negative experience and we have that knowledge, then we can look for the silver lining before it's even happened, or know that it's coming. So we've been through a period of a few challenges lined up in a row, and that knowledge was really comforting, because that, what you were saying, the justice schema, that good things should only happen to good people and bad things should only happen to bad things. When you're in the middle of a run of bad things happening, you think, what have I done? What have I done? What have I done to deserve this? So that would be my advice in those circumstances, is to look for the silver lining. Not necessarily to ask why is this happening from a grand purpose perspective, but what are the little nuggets of goodness and greatness that can come from this level of suffering or discomfort.
That's so beautiful. And that actually takes me to the second gem. Whoops, that I wanted to mention. And so the second gem is again something that's really easy to know at a conscious level, but far harder to apply, but speaks directly to what you just mentioned, which is perception is created. So when we take account that the world is simply as it is, and every individual's perception of the world is creating their reality, then that offers us back choice. And something that I said to one of my clients recently, which really made her laugh, was, look, we're all delusional. It's just a matter of whether our delusions are working for us or against us. So, and when we can take this stuff with a little bit of lightness, that we've all got delusions running out. optimism being one of them. And we know optimism is a type of perceptual bias. However, the results speak for themselves, because optimists statistically have higher chances of their outcomes coming to fruition because they have this positive bias that things will inevitably work out. And when that is your perception and how you engage with the world, and I believe that things will inevitably work out, then things inevitably work out. Versus if I go, well, it's all useless, everything goes to hell in a handbasket anyway, what am I going to do? I'm going to give up, sit down where I am, probably wallow and eat marshmallows. So we create our reality by the delusions we play. And when we recognize that, okay, we're all delusional, now how are those delusions working for me or against me, it just creates a moment where we can take our power back, and rather than just let the delusion run, go, okay, I actually have a choice here. And if I know that there are delusions that work for people in achieving the quality of life that they want, what are those delusions? And then how do I start creating those same delusions?
How do I get some of that?
Exactly. So yes, silver linings, looking for those silver linings, looking for the gems, looking in what I can learn from this. What's the gift of the experience? That's probably the ultimate reframe that I tend to ask myself in going, okay, what have I just been gifted here? And whether that's learning to refine things, learning to go, oh, there's another layer here, learning in probably what takes me to my third gem, which is life is the culmination, and your quality of life is the culmination of everything that you have done and pursued to date, and everything that you haven't done and haven't pursued to date. So for me, when I look at my own delusions, and then I connect that back to how have those delusions contributed to everything I have done and everything I haven't done, that then gives me a far more practical, stepwise fashion to start going, okay, with everything that I have done or haven't done, how is that ultimately leading to where I want to go? And is that in alignment, or do I need to tweak some things? And so they would be probably my three gems, and they all do fit hand in hand, because the first one, the justice schema. So schema is just a fancy word for lens. So the fact that I'm expecting the world to operate according to this very kind of archaic idea of an eye for an eye. And if I actually suspend that and go, the world operates as it does, and now I can afford my perceptions to come in line with how the world actually operates, not how I've been indoctrinated to believe it to be, and that I'm not okay if it's not operating like that. Because if we have a perception and the world reflects back to us that isn't true, i.e. something bad has just happened, I thought I was a good person, now that must mean I'm a bad person, my entire world has just been disrupted because my perceptual lens has served to tell me the world needs to be other than what it is. And so now I'm unsafe within the world because I don't know how to effectively navigate it. All right. And that's what really causes people to become unsteady. So then when we take ownership of going, okay, that's a perception running out, then we can look about and go, okay, what perceptions work for people? How do I get in alignment with that, with everything that I do and don't do? Now I'm back in the driver's seat. So that's probably ultimately what I wanted to share today with our perceptions. Because you said, Ash, you go first.
And I knew that it would roll into the notes that I had taken for today, because it always does. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about our perceptual lens and how we show up in the world according to those delusions and according to looking through that lens, I challenge people to ask themselves, how did I come to create this lens or this perception, and how are the expectations of others dictating to me how I'm living my life?
Beautiful.
Because for me, one of the biggest barriers to breaking through to living a life that I love was dropping the need to live up to others' expectations, dropping the need to make everyone else happy all the time, because we can't make everyone around us that we want in our lives happy all the time. It's just impossible. But we're trained to try to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that it's very suffocating. Those expectations are very suffocating. So that was the first gem that I wanted to talk about, was thinking about those expectations, and what would your life look like if you dropped the need to please.
Yeah, beautiful. And I guess to add to that, something that I often get people to think about is, in that we've been indoctrinated to believe that in making others happy, that's a gift and we're serving them. However, everyone's responsibility is their own happiness. And I don't mean that in a way of, oh, well, you're suffering, too bad, make yourself happy. No, there's a difference between attempting to make someone happy and compassion, because it's in the compassion and understanding that people start to feel their own steadiness. No one likes something too sugary sweet poured down their throat if they're in suffering. So it's never about, oh, well, make yourself happy, and coming from a place of righteousness or non-giving. However, in recognizing that if the biggest gift we can actually give people is the appropriate room to find their own inner wisdom for their own well-being, health, and happiness, that then creates the flourishing from the inside out. And that's how it's that same adage of give someone a fish and they eat for a meal, teach them how to fish, they have meals forever, whatever that saying is. And it's the same thing. If I'm attempting to make someone happy, I've given them a dose in that moment, and they haven't learned it from the inside out.
That's right. The next point that I wanted to talk about is vulnerability, and how vulnerability actually leads to a really beautiful and smooth evolution to who we are supposed to become and what we're supposed to let go of. And the work that I've done with clients at retreats and in any space, and in my own personal relationships, when I, in my experience, when I am most vulnerable, that gives the allowance for the other person to be their most vulnerable. And we don't have to be connecting over the same thing. Like, it doesn't have to be, oh, I had this experience and it made me feel X, Y, Z, and then they say, oh, me too. It doesn't have to be a me too. It's literally just the showing up as your most vulnerable self in any situation allows the other person or people in that vicinity the permission to do the same. And when as humans, when we feel understood, when we're our most vulnerable and we feel understood and supported, we're then able to let go of the anchors of what that experience has been repeating over and over again to hold us in the same spot. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Always.
Yeah, so expectations, vulnerability, and I wanted to talk about how other people come into your life to show you what you need to heal within yourself.
Oh, beautiful.
So when when someone else hurts you, or you feel hurt by another person, so this could be someone that you consider to be a soulmate, it could be and I believe that soulmates show up in your life in many different, not just in a romantic way, but in many different ways. They trigger things in you that are uncomfortable. They're doing you that favor of showing you that part of yourself that you needed to look at and you weren't looking at.
Yes. Yeah, beautiful.
Mm.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Wherever we feel triggered, you're exactly spot on as always. That's the indicator in to go, okay, whatever it is that just triggered me. So if I circle right back to the beginning, it was the sense of injustice. And I had never learned how to heal the part of me or recognize the part of me or soothe the part of me that, and even though I'd already lived through certain, by any measure, large scale tragedies, there's a difference of when people seemingly are behaving in an unfair way. That requires a different level of expansion and openness and acceptance to go, okay, this is what the world is now reflecting back to me. What do I learn? And what do I learn about myself? And, at different times I have found personally that there's times to be very fluid and move around and graceful. And then at that particular time, I also found an inner strength of you shall not pass. And there was an adamance there. And so it's also okay to stand your ground, and I think it's about also the wisdom of going, what's an immovable barrier for me? You shall not pass. And where can I afford to be very graceful and create outcomes in a light touch way? And so for me, I think it's about both of those things come back to a permission work in going, I'm okay, irrespective of the particular circumstances, because it's my job to ensure that I'm okay with the life I'm creating for myself.
It's my job to set my own boundaries. If we loop that back to the living to others' expectations and being a person who likes to please others, if you are burnt out and depleted by that way of living, that is your responsibility to reset your boundaries, to be able to refuel your own energy. And you can reset your boundaries and set new boundaries in a kind and loving and vulnerable way, which connects you with other people in a deeper way, and gives you pride in yourself for having those difficult conversations. So you get more respect for yourself, you get a new set of boundaries, which gives you breathing space to be able to honor yourself in where you're at. So boundary setting is a huge and beneficial process.
Absolutely. And I think one of the really challenging parts in terms of that expectation of others is if you typically lead with kindness and compassion, they may not necessarily expect that underlying strength or adamance to be there, because something that I have probably observed over time as well is that kindness can be mistaken for malleability in a non-enlightened way. So people can take advantage of kindness.
Yeah.
Because they don't actually understand the strength that goes with kindness. They see it as a weakness rather than a strength. So I think the learning that I learned really early on was that you teach people how to treat you.
Yeah.
And again, that sounds really obvious, but when you take into account everything that I'm doing, everything that I'm saying, every standard I set for myself is how I'm teaching others how to treat me.
That's right. And when people first start to feel your strength and your new boundaries, it will be upsetting.
Yeah.
And it will ruffle a few feathers. But the feathers smooth down, and when they realize that you still love them, it's just it's from a place that's much more healthy for you. There's actually joy in that for them, because they get a deeper understanding of you, and they may have to adjust the way that they're showing up, but that's okay. Change is okay. It's just that we don't like it. As humans, we don't like it.
Yes. And that again goes back to that point of when people have learned, and it will be subconscious for the most part, that the way I get my needs met is to present like this, and then someone will meet my needs in this fashion. Again, when you alter your behavior to go, actually, that's not true, and that recipe isn't going to work in the way that you wanted it to, that they will be destabilized by that. And when people are destabilized, they'll go into fight, flight, freeze, or flop in extreme circumstances. So adjustment and recentering is allowing for the natural wave that occurs with any altering of the subconscious contract that says, you'll behave like this and I'll behave like this.
Yeah. Beautiful points today.
Yeah, they're probably a little bit bigger, or I don't know. Yeah, it'd be great to get some feedback from our listeners in today's chat, because we
and some questions on if there's any part of the chat today that you want to know more about, or you want clarification on, just throw it in the comments or send us a message, and we can do another whole podcast on any of these topics. So
beautiful. Cool. Well, happy Labor Day. Thanks for tuning in and joining us. And we hope that you're having a really beautiful day in celebration of having some time to spend the day exactly as you please.
See you later, everyone. Bye.